Hello and welcome back to my channel and to the final part of my Val Lewton retrospective. And today we're going to be looking at the final film in the series, which was Bedlam. Now I think it's fair to say that this is probably the least liked of the series. I was hoping this time round when I watched it again I'd see more in it. But I've come to the conclusion that perhaps it is the least of the series. And it is rather a difficult film to like. Part of the problem, I think, is it's trying too hard. Right? So it starts off with images from Hogarth, the painter, painting in the 1700s, including from the Rake's Progress, this series of paintings he did, including one which was called Scene from a Madhouse, right? And you've got classical music, and you've got very Shakespearean dialogue, and it's trying too hard to be highfalutin, and it's a bit precious and a bit boring, actually. The story concerns the head of this hospital, a genuine hospital in London, a hospital for the insane, which was nicknamed Bedlam. And it's played by Boris Karloff in the last of his 3 roles for Val Lewton. He gives a great performance. And he falls foul of a local aristocrat woman and her benefactor, her lover. And the first 30 minutes of the film is this kind of rather precious comedy of moral one-upmanship and wit and who's going to get the better of them. And then she falls foul of Boris Karloff. He gets the upper hand and she's interned in Bedlam, and you think, oh great, finally we're going to get to the story, finally something exciting is going to happen. But it doesn't really. Bedlam turns out to be this room with sort of sawdust on it, just one room full of lunatics and people who look a bit worse for wear. And she has quite a nice time. She befriends them. There's some people by the pillar who seem to be fairly cogent people, ex-lawyers and writers and so on. No one attacks her. She doesn't have anything bad happen to her. There's one brilliant scene where her name gets picked up by the people in the room and they keep repeating it. It echoes around her and you feel the sense that she might be going into madness. Because of course that's what you're expecting in the narrative. If someone gets put in a lunatic asylum, you expect that environment will turn them mad. That's what we're hoping for. But it never gets anywhere near that. And that's a great problem with the film, I think. It does pick up energy once you get into Bedlam itself, but there's no threat. And part of the reason for this is because this isn't really a horror film. It's a social issue movie. It's a movie that's trying to make a statement about how we treat, people with mental health issues. And so basically, it's got its claws trimmed, right? So there's one scene where Boris Karloff threatens her with putting her in a cell with an incredibly violent, tough guy. And you think, oh, well, this is the key scene of the film, right? She goes in, she starts talking to him, and within seconds, they're best friends. Really? I don't think anyone who works in mental institutions or hospitals for the criminally insane will say that that's a good idea or is ever going to work. The whole film blunts itself. It's trying so hard to be nice and say the right thing that it becomes completely unrealistic. And then you can't invest in it. No one is going to solve the problems of a violently insane criminal by just walking into their cell and saying, oh, hello, aren't you nice? That's not going to work. I wish it did. Anna Lee gives a spirited performance in the role of the woman who goes into the prison, though I think she's rather miscast, actually. The casting in this film is very odd. Elizabeth Russell turns up again, but this time as a sort of slattern, as a sort of vulgar commoner. Very odd. I think, a very good performance by Boris Karloff, and I do love the ending, right? All the way through the film, Boris Karloff's having some amendments made by the stonemasons to the back of the hospital, and one of them is this Quaker. There's a rather irritating sort of motif that runs through the film, where this Quaker speaks in very Quakery language, like, I see thee, thee are like this, and thou do this. Gets a bit much, actually. It's a bit overdone. But it's nice that segues into the ending where the masonry is part of the plot. So what they do, rather than like in Edgar Allan Poe's Cask of Amontillado, they actually wall up Boris Johnson So Boris Johnson, Boris Karloff. That's a Freudian slip. They wall up Boris Karloff in the walls of this bedlam, forever to be trapped there, victim of his own bad justice. I like the fact that the witty idea that a wit, this woman is a wit, is the best person to help the unwitted, the people who've lost their wits. That's a nice idea, but it's not developed enough. Nothing is developed enough. So there's a mute girl who's one of the people who's mad in the asylum, who does nothing all the movie, and at the end she's the one. She has this trowel that she kills someone with, and she's like this figure of justice. And it's a very strong image, but it's not really developed. Nothing is really developed properly because the movie is trying so desperately to put across a message. And for once in the Val Lewton films, it's rather ham-fisted, so that, for example, the baddies are very much, the Tories, and the goodies are very much the Whigs, who are the sort of the preceders of the left and Labour. So it's very unsubtle, it's very, tub thumping, which is unusual for the Val Lewton films up to this point, which have been very subtle in their messaging. So I really want to like this movie, and I still think it's worth your time. It's still worth investing in. Karloff is still very good in it. And I like its class comment, which is unusual in an American movie, how Karloff's, his madness really, his anger and the way he treats people may be down to class, and the way that his position as a doctor is not given the authority it should be in this kind of class-ridden age. It's got lots of elements that are worthy in it and are interesting, but the script is not developed enough. It's too in love with its own pretentious attempt to mirror Shakespearean language. And I think it misses the mark, really. The one Val Lewton film that I think does. But it's still worth a try if you've never seen it. So that's my summing up of the Val Lewton movies. Don't worry, there'll be a ranking coming along very soon.